Thank you. This is the first time I've had the opportunity to speak at this event. I got wheeled back into the consortium by Mary about 3 years ago, having been first involved over 20 years ago. A little more of that story soon. We've had some inspiring conversations and presentations from our speakers today and yesterday. Eon focusing on culture and leadership as well as practice and organisation. David Taylor with well-being and empowerment at the heart. James Timpson, absolutely about empowerment with his upside down organisation. And it's all about people. The common theme is people. And what I'm going to do is just a brief background on how DSDM came about, essentially the last 22 years. Andrew's going to take you through the framework in a level of detail in about 20 minutes, so it won't be a great level of detail. And then I'll close with where we're heading and how we want to engage, with partner organisations in much the same way, in exactly the same way that the consortium has grown through contributions, commitment, dedication from partner organisations, hence the word consortium. So, it's all about the people, but it started in a world that's very different from the world, in some ways, that we live in today. Early 1990s, 93 this was, late 93, we had new development technologies, we had object orientation, we had GUI 4GLs, we had a lot of traditional COBOL. We certainly had the proprietary methods and we had the waterfall methods, but there was something missing. We had new technology, but we still weren't getting effective, business-led, successful projects. So there was a lot of thinking and gnashing of teeth. And what we realised was we didn't have a responsive. In those days, it wasn't called Agile. That word came in somewhat later. It was all about RAD, Rapid Application Development, nodding heads from the grayer hairs in the audience. Excellent. We didn't have that project framework, certainly not one that was accessible and open and could be used with different tools, different technologies, different proprietary vendors and so forth. And we also didn't really have the business commitment because in waterfall, and most of these case methods, and certainly SSADM was very waterfall, and the business would reluctantly sit down with an analyst and give some requirements and then sign off a document they probably hadn't read and then wait for something to turn up and test it, and it bore no relation to what they thought they said or indeed what the market needed. All the problems that iteration and some of the techniques that came in were designed to address. So how did it all come about? Well, I didn't want to go too explicit with this slide, but it actually came to me in the shower in Gloucestershire, where we were living at the time. That's me without a beard and at least 20 years ago, trying to keep the timelines specific. It was just one of those sort of light bulb moments, not quite eureka running down the road with no clothes on, but it needed people to come together. Without going through all the gory details, we managed in January of 1994 to meet in the basement of a hotel in Bloomsbury in London. We had 16 organisations, and and these were A, big organisations, and B, competitive in many respects, certainly the supplier side. And it was supply and customer that was meeting together because of there was a need on the customer side for something that worked and helped them deliver business value, business-driven products, and there was a need on the vendor side to have something that was common that wasn't necessarily about locking in their customer. It's not to say they didn't still have proprietary models as well. And the consortium came about, and happily we found Mary, who is, as you know from last night, we all thought was going to be resigning as chairman of DSDM Consortium, but magically reappeared as CEO rather of the new Agile Business Consortium. And that was in Kent. And from those humble beginnings, an idea in Gloucestershire, a meeting in London, and a consortium that was run from and grew over the years. The tricky part, of course, was developing the method. And particular credit here for the initial and subsequent iterations of DSDM, the method, and into Agile PM, Agile Programme Management, subsequently to Jennifer Stapleton. Jennifer will be embarrassed and is slinking beneath her seat in the far corner. She was chair of what we called our technical committee at the time, and she has been, dare I say it, the mother of DSDM, the method. Late 94, version 1 was published. The key bit, and I picked this quote out from maybe the preface to version 1, not only rapid and responsive to changing business needs, brackets agile, although not called that, but rigorous in terms of quality and governance. And it introduced some new concepts, well, relatively new concepts. Moscow, the must, shoulds, coulds and won'ts, actually came from Di Clegg from Oracle. It was a technique he'd developed and was using within the Oracle method. Time boxing, that was novel and new and found its way into version 1 of the method. The thing that didn't find its way into the method in those days was stand-ups. Because in those days, we all had chairs, so we didn't need to stand up. It was a new concept that came in, I suspect, around about 2000, and probably from Scrum, but that was fine. So we sat around in small groups, business and technology together to effect delivery. As Mary mentioned, Ari was one of the signatories on the consortium's behalf at Snowbird in Utah in 2001 for the Agile Manifesto for Software Development, because that's what we were all about. And then subsequent publications over the years and subsequent versions of the method, and moving into a much richer set of project management, program management, and other products. Everybody caught on. We had, Agile became the thing, and we have the Agile Alliance, the Scrum Alliance, the Agile Consortium, which was DSDM Benelux. And this amuses me, the International Consortium for Agile, which is neither international nor a consortium, it's a private initiative, but good marketing, well done. And customers started adopting it, and not necessarily that well. So we all do Agile now, we're going to stand up in meetings. We're Agile, we're doing Scrum, therefore we're Agile. Well, no, but at least you're on the journey. And some people are still only just starting that journey in IT. We had method wars. I think, DSDM Consortium tried to step back from that because what's the point and where does it take you? But we had XD, we had Kanban, we had Scrum, we had Lean, as well as DSDM. But more happily, they've all come together under this umbrella of Agile. And so DSDM embraces Scrum. And one of the publications we have today is using Scrum with DSDM, because DSDM provides the project framework, the management framework. Scrum provides some of the techniques at the delivery level. So today we've got global coverage, not strong in the US, because Scrum and Agile Alliance pretty much dominated over there. Substantial publications like the handbooks for project management, program management, business analysis, accredited training organisations all around the world, particularly through the partnership with APMG, smaller publications like the pocketbooks and the guidebooks, and this conference, which DSDM had been behind for many years. So that was where we got to the start of this year. We then decided, or the consortium decided, to start to take a look around, and hence expanded horizons, because we started to look to the horizons and say, well, we've done 22 years, where do we go next? I'm not sure I'll be here in 22 years' time reprising the next 22 years, but hopefully somebody will. Because we had no idea when all this started that 22 years later we'd be here in this context and in this setting. And we looked at the wider business. And you'll recognise this picture from something very similar that Sebastian and Dave put up yesterday morning. We see many organisations, you work in many of these organisations, that are still typically hierarchical, command and control, lots of supervision and management. I particularly like the megaphones in the little icons at the executive level. And customers don't appear on the chart. Where we're heading, and we've heard of some excellent examples with Eon, with Timpson, with some of the beyond budgeting examples, Handelsbank and Maersk, for example, that we heard about this morning, is to smaller collaborative teams. This is both an IT context, but I'm talking about in the wider business. Teams that work with each other in an equal way and work with the supply chain, work with the customer, hence the little characters outside the dotted line. And what we recognised, and there's very tangible results, Beata showed some of those results in terms of shareholder return on capital this morning. What we discovered is that organisations that act more like that on the right and put the customer at the heart of what they do actually were more successful. They were in the upper quartile of shareholder return, upper quartile of share price in stock markets and so forth. Pockets, limited, but as we look further, we find more examples, and Beata showed us a whole bunch more of examples this morning. So collaboration's the norm, small focused teams, no command and control, a cultural shift in the way in which organisations operate. The how, not just the what. Again, Beata stressed that this morning. What we realised was that there wasn't anything really out there in terms of a public, accessible, open way of achieving this transition. There are lots of individual practices, there are some consultancies, there are one or two quotes methods that are proprietary, but nothing that was equivalent to what DSDM had become. And there are tangible benefits, and these are evidenced in research, and we'd be happy to share some of those research. But these benefits are not just about having a happier workforce, they're about getting better results in the market, outflanking the competition, getting better return for shareholders. All the stakeholders in the business are better off if they're adopting this new cultural mode. We also listen to some of the mood music, and there are some people that are on the margins of what you might be able to implement. There's a movement called holocracy that some of you may have heard of. Frederick Laloux is pretty revolutionary in his reinventing organisations. Linda Holbeck, professor in this country, the wider notion of an agile organisation is still being developed. That's absolutely true. So this is a journey. This is almost like the start of the journey that we were into Agile. We're now into the journey to the Agile business. And I quite like Edwin Dando, who's a New Zealand-based consultant and chairs the New Zealand Agile Conference. The trunk of the tree is agile for technology. Without a doubt, Agile was born in software, true, but it's sprouting all these different branches. And then he also says, the Agilists just happen to be 10 to 15 years ahead of most. It's a long journey, and it will be a long journey, but it's a journey that we're embarking on. So where are we today? We have development technologies. They're different. They're components and they're services and they're cloud-based. We have IT methods, Scrum, Kanban, others, and we have the Agile Project Framework from what was the DSDM Consortium with Agile PM and so forth. But there was something missing. And what we identified, having done the research and asked the questions, was an open, free, agile business change framework. And that's what we announced last night. That's what we're launching at this conference, and that's what we invite our partners to work on. And Andrew will now take you through it.
Thank you very much, Ed. So this is really an opportunity for me to dig a little bit deeper than I did in the 5 minutes yesterday. Some elements of what I'm going to talk about, and I'm not going to talk about it all in detail because I don't have time. Some elements like Agile PM have grown up over the years that the DSDM Consortium's been in existence, lots of substance to that and so on. Other areas, the newer areas, we really only have a sketch outline at the moment for some of this, but lots of the right concepts in place to frame a future in that space. So in getting to that point, we acknowledged the wisdom, if you like, of having the customer at the heart of what we're doing. So this has been the case for Agile software since the beginning, exactly the case of DSDM in the early days, all about getting business people or customers engaged with building our software, right? Great. But expanding that, the new branches and shoots, is actually all about saying we should be making sure we put the customer at the heart of our business, not just at building software. Let's use some of those great practices and techniques that have been proven within Agile software development and in the business change context that DSDM has always had, and take it further. So let's start thinking about building business products in an Agile way. What do I mean by a business product? Well, if I'm an insurance company, an insurance product, insurance policy, that's a business product of an insurance company. A service that we might be looking to do in that context would be, how do we handle a claim as an insurance company? Those are the sorts of things I mean by business products and business services. And of course we have the whole concept of digital services, the IT element to those, which which is much closer to the heartland of Agile. And there's some fantastic work being done already out there. It's surprisingly, for a lot of people, the work that's going on in UK government, Digital by Default, is actually got some fantastic pioneering ideas. And the whole culture of the way that's been done is to make sure it's open and available for everybody to use. So lots of good things going on there. But what we're looking to do is to focus on business change. Therefore, business products and business services are at the heart of what we're doing. So the sorts of things we need to focus on to make that a reality around business change are things like the culture, the strategy, the way the organisation's set up to achieve these things, and the leadership to make it happen. So those things need to be all done in a way that enables and encourages this customer-centric agile approach. So the framework is focused around that. We also need to understand the needs of shareholders and trustees, and in the round table session that I hosted just now, we started getting into that, and we're in a situation where for years and years now, shareholder value is being maintained by cutting cost, and ultimately that can't last forever. Some organisations are already getting to the point that if we cut another 5% of our headcount, we're going to be cutting into the bone. We won't be able to run the operation by cutting cost any further. So we've driven as much efficiency into process as we can, and now's the time to say, well, the only way we're going to improve from here on in is through innovation. The only way we will be able to satisfy our shareholders and trustees is just by doing more and doing better, by growing and so on. So we need to get shareholders into the position that they're thinking that they're going to get their value from just having more business rather than just trying to squeeze every last drop of blood out of a business that exists today. So shareholders and trustees need to be considered. Regulators, increasing regulation in all sorts of industries. As I mentioned yesterday, some of the legislation I've looked at is just being poorly interpreted by businesses of what they need to do. People think they have to write everything down. They think they have to, specify everything up front and therefore do things in a waterfall way. You actually read what the legislation says in the cases that I have done. So, and those have been mainly in the financial sector, although I also looked at the regulations for medical implants in the US, looked at that legislation as well. There's actually nothing that says you have to specify everything in detail all up front. What it says is you have to be clear and state what your intention is before you go on and do it. And you know what? You could do that at the beginning of a time box or a sprint. And that should be okay, provided that the regulators and the people who are coming in to do audits and everything else genuinely understand that that is the essence of control that they're after, actually. So we need to understand the needs of regulators, the needs of auditors who come in to check that organisations are doing the right thing. And we need to make sure that that is delivered in an agile way. We also have suppliers and partners. Most organisations went through a period of time where they focused on their core business. I was at British Airways when that movement all started, and British Airways decided it wasn't in the business of making meals for its passengers. It would outsource that. That wasn't its core business. That's the first thing British Airways outsourced, actually, was its catering. And what was interesting even then, we were looking at, well, where does that all stop? And actually taken to a logical conclusion, British Airways could have ended up in, well, our only objective is to market and sell tickets to passengers. We can outsource absolutely everything else. And then you look at that and think, well, that doesn't make you an airline, does it, actually? So obviously it didn't go to that sort of extreme, but those philosophical conversations were had. So one of the things we have to be cognizant of is that it's people that make the difference. It's people that that drive success within organisations. And as Ed said, there have been several presentations yesterday that really push us in that direction. So what do we put into the framework? What underpins the framework to make this work? And we've got three sort of rocket motors, if you like, of our rocket of success. We've got communication, collaboration and commitment. So if we can ensure through appropriate communication that everybody understands what our vision is, what we're trying to achieve, if we can make sure that people are committed to collaborating to achieve that, then that's where success will come from. That requires leadership. And again, yesterday there was conversation about what's the difference between leadership and management. The two are very different. Yeah, and I've got a quote later on from a surprising source that describes that in a little more detail. So making sure that our organisations are properly led, that drives that sort of commitment, collaboration and commitment, is where we will be able to deliver the payload of change, whatever that change might be. Now, one of the things that we set out to do is to try and demystify this whole change thing. Yeah, because what we've seen for so long, we've got change happening down with people building software and doing that sort of thing. We've got change being handled in projects and change being handled in programs and change being handled in portfolios and all of this. And they've all got their own processes and their own language and everything else. Our view is it's a lot simpler than that, actually. What you're doing, any change, and it doesn't matter whether you're talking about some little changes to features in products or services or the way services are delivered, or whether you're talking about taking your whole organisation into a new business market or whatever. Change is essentially the same. Yeah, we are looking to go from a need that we've understood to fulfilling that need. That's all change is. And if we look at it in that light, we can actually come up with a very, very simple framework process. And to an extent, this is the framework, what I'm about to show you. There's not loads of stuff you go digging into underneath. As far as process goes, this is it. We need to establish what the driver is for that change. Why do we want to do it? What's the vision, the goal, the objective of making it happen? What's the justification for it? And it doesn't matter, as I say, whether you're taking your organisation into a whole new marketplace or adding a feature to a piece of software, there has to be a justification. The way you express that justification may be very different. You know, if you're going to spend $1 million on something, you're going to need a different level of rigour and persuasion for the people who are going to make the investment than if you're going to spend $25 on doing something in 5 minutes. You still need to understand what the driver is. Then you need to understand fundamentally, not in detail, but fundamentally, what do you need to do to make that happen? Yeah? Who needs to be involved? How are you going to make it happen? What's the appropriate organisation to make it happen? How will it be governed to make sure we're moving in the right direction? And again, that scales from the very lowest level to the top level. And then the bulk of it is getting the job done. Yeah, and there will be thousands of different ways you could get the job done, but ultimately, that's what you need to be focusing on. And in the true Agile way, it's about delivering value early and often. Okay? And that's it. That's what change is, we think. So how do you make that happen? Innovation. So starting from understanding the driver and establishing the foundations, all the way through into getting the job done and delivering that value incrementally, early and often. This is about people, ultimately. It's about people and ideas coming together. And what we have here is the digging into our innovation hub. So for any change initiative that's going on, there will be core change participants. These are the people that are doing the job of change, if you like, the people that are working on this. And then there'll be other participants, influencers, stakeholders, the people who will be subject to the business change that's happening. You know, if you're changing your business, that means you're going to move a call centre from one place to another, then the call centre staff are going to be impacted by the change you're talking about. But all of these things need to be focused on the desired outcome and this idea of early and incremental delivery of value. You'll notice that these influencers and stakeholders are orbiting outside and coming in. Yeah, these are the people that aren't there all day, every day, doing the change, but they're the people that are involved to make sure that the change is properly directed and properly guided to do the right thing, not in a command and control way, but in a participatory, collaborative way. So, taking our concept of going from need to fulfillment and scaling this concept up, if you like, in terms of the framework and what can be achieved, ultimately we're looking at three fundamental things: leading change, coordinating change, and actually making the change. So in terms of leading change, our framework's going to include the things I announced yesterday, the Agile strategy and Agile portfolio type work, making sure that portfolios of programs, projects, and even small incremental changes that will just be ongoing throughout the life of a product or a company are properly contained within an Agile portfolio with the appropriate level of governance and empowerment of the people to ensure that they're doing the right things. So Agile strategy and portfolio with key elements underpinning that of Agile leadership and the Agile culture to make it happen. The items in red you will see are the things that really need the focus. They're the people parts, not the process parts. They're the people, or those are the areas that the biggest change focus will be needed. In terms of coordinating the change, that's where we have projects and programs to do that. And here we're looking to make sure the organisation infrastructure within the organisation, I'm not talking about technology, I'm talking about rules, regulations, ways of working, the stuff that PMOs tend to get involved with. We need to be making sure that those are supporting and promoting an Agile way of working. That's the Agile enablement. The Agile governance is about making sure that we're aligning the controls that every business is rightly entitled to have over the investment it makes. We're doing that in a properly Agile way. And then actually making the changes. We've got the Agile product evolution, Agile service evolution to do that. Now, one of the things that is clear out there in the world, the vast majority of the Agile development that's going on today is in the format of Scrum teams and Scrum projects. Not Scrum projects, Scrum teams and Scrum development. What Scrum doesn't have is a concept of projects per se. So what we're quite happy to do and embrace, as Ed said, is to embrace the concept of Agile product evolution being done in whatever way is appropriate, yeah, and leaving opportunity to wrap the coordination of that where it's appropriate to do so in a business change context around the evolution of products and services, all aimed at delighting our customer. I'm going to skip on a little bit as we're short of time. So in the idea that this simple change process applies at multiple levels will be explained in the next few slides, which I won't dwell on, but in terms of portfolio innovation, the sorts of things we look at are making sure in terms of the driver that we understand the business strategy and the strategic priorities of the whole organisation. In terms of the foundation of a portfolio, understanding how we determine whether the work that's being proposed, the projects and programs being proposed, properly align with what the organisation is trying to achieve and the way it's going to be measured. And the stuff this morning from Beyond Budgeting is really great stuff that we're hoping to work with them on to embrace as part of this framework as well. And then in terms of incremental business value, just understanding, is what we're delivering actually adding to the bottom line in the way that we mean. And by bottom line, I don't necessarily mean money, profit. If our organisation is motivated around different things, that's what our bottom line is. So in terms of portfolio management, in our innovation hub for portfolio management, we've got our executive team who should be engaged in making sure that the portfolio is properly shaped to meet the business strategy that they are defining for the organisation on behalf of shareholders and investors. We've got portfolio managers and architects and all of those sorts of people who are going to be involved to make sure that things are coordinated and done in the right way. And then we have sponsors of various projects and business analysts potentially, all sort of involved in this hub of innovation around making sure the portfolio is properly formulated, governed, managed, and so on. Agile programs. Agile PgM is one of the products that's been on the market for a number of years. We don't essentially see that thing being any more than tweaked. Yeah, but again, we've got this same concept that has existed in Agile Programme Management for a long time, of core participants and those people that are involved from time to time. Down at the project level, we have the same sort of idea, Agile PM. Yeah? What we've identified here, again, all this part of simplifying things, we're going to be making a few tweaks to language down here. And we've had a role of technical coordinator, for example. Called a technical coordinator for very good reasons in the past, but you know what? At every other level, architect is a more sensible term. So let's get away with this. Let's demystify it. Let's call them all architects working at different levels. Yeah. So that sort of thing is the tweaks that we're going to make. And then down at the development level, I've used Scrum here as an example. Yeah. So yeah, it fits in, and actually Scrum fits into this process very nicely too. Agile service development is a really new field for us, and will actually be the focus of one of the earliest product launches that we're looking at in the new year, where we're looking to try and make sure we have a version of Agile Project Management that properly embraces the digital service development stuff being done by central government. But it's not just central government, it's going to local government, it's going into the private sector, it's spreading around the world. So this is it's that good. And we want to make sure that we can help strengthen some of those things that aren't getting the traction they deserve within that framework through hopefully collaborating to deliver that sort of thing. So I just want to finish off with this section, channeling the words of the wise and introducing the values that you saw in the snazzy video yesterday. The words of the wise are over there on the right of the slide. I'll let you read those. But these are people, many of whom are long dead, yeah, who have been saying these wise things for a very long time. And all we're doing is standing up and channeling those into, in this case, valuing innovation over the status quo. Valuing inspiring leadership over conservative management. That's the interesting thing around leadership. Look at the quote there, you manage things, you lead people. Rear Admiral Grace Murray Hopper from the US Navy. Yeah, who would think that that's the sort of philosophical statement you'd see coming from an admiral in the Navy? Yeah, we don't manage people, we don't command and control people. We do that with our assets, we lead people. Value collaborative autonomy, the power of teams over the hierarchical control, the slide that Ed showed earlier. And finally, customer focus over self-interest. And self-interest here is, scales from the self-interest of short-term thinking in shareholders and investors in an organisation, all the way down to the I don't want to do anything different because it's going to make my life a bit tougher or a bit more difficult, or my team, I don't want my team to have to deal with that workaround for some software features that may not exist. Yeah, it's actually making sure that we have a proper customer focus. What does the customer want to see? Yeah, if you're not serving the customer, your job is to be serving someone who is. So that we've drafted as a manifesto for business agility, acknowledging that while there might sometimes be a time and a place for the things in yellow there, actually our focus should be in the things in orange.
Thank you, Andrew. Just to conclude then, that's the journey so far, just to look a little way ahead to the journey to come. It's helping organisations, your organisation potentially, certainly many organisations in this country and beyond, to move from the current norms to that world of innovation for business advantage, the first tenet of the manifesto. From moving from that old school command and control hierarchical management model to one of inspiring leadership, and this is leadership at all levels. This could be leadership of teams anywhere in the organisation, not just at the senior executive level. From taking those machines under that command and control model to the collaborative autonomy, the self-motivating, self-automating almost groups, and moving the interest away from me, and protecting my turf, my job, my career, to one of serving the customer, internal and external, to give that real focus to the organisation. That's the journey that all organisations who have been on an Agile journey, who are starting an Agile journey, who want to step onto the first stepping stone of the Agile journey, need to consider. So our mission as the Agile Business Consortium is to be a global leader. This goes way beyond the UK. The DSDM Consortium has a footprint in many parts of the world now, not everywhere, but that will be growing, in promoting, supporting and enabling Agile business. That's both the change and potentially subsequently the operation, but immediately we're focused on the change. And we do that, or we'll be doing that, by providing advice, guidance, accredited products and services to executives and their change management teams and agents. And that's exactly what the DSDM Consortium has done for the last 20 odd years at the IT software level. It's worked through partners to deliver these products and services and accreditations. It's created the IP. So, if you like, our business architecture in terms of the solutions that we expect to bring to market are identical to what we've been doing in the IT and software context for the last 20 years. So the Agile Business Consortium will create this intellectual property in terms of the framework, the content, accreditation, examination models and so forth, assessments. And it will be delivered through publications, as we do today. Publications that we initiate, publications that we produce with and by partners. We will be offering accreditation, as we do today. Training courses delivered through partner organisations. Coaching and mentoring. This will probably become a bigger part. Yes, there are DSDM coaches, accredited coaches today. I think the coaching and mentoring, because of the people focus, will become a much bigger part of what the consortium looks to do over the coming years. Membership, the membership model for existing members stays the same. There'll be membership products and services for those who choose to join this expanded consortium. And events, webinars, conferences such as this will continue to be part of the future, but under the Agile Business Consortium banner. We've got here thus far, the last 22 years, 23 years, on the journey with partners, a myriad of partners. Those that have contributed specifically to the work that's been done so far, and that's been over the last 6 months or so. The names are up there. Large consulting organisations such as PwC and TCS, smaller consulting organisations, and a team of individuals who are associates of, members of the DSDM Consortium, what was DSDM Consortium, such as Jennifer, Mark, Katie and Barbara, and some end user organisations as well, who would be the consumers of. So again, following that model that started in January 1994. Of collaboration. And it's a journey that we want partners to join us on, partners to help contribute stuff, content, ideas, experiences, what worked, what didn't, and we've already had some good inputs over the last day and a half, certainly into implementation, training, adoption, and then clients who become the case studies, who become the agents of change in the sense of, well, it's been done before. It gives me confidence perhaps if it's happened already in my sector. So that's where we need to get to in much the same way that we've travelled the journey over the last 20 years or so. So that's it. I don't know, Amy, if there's time for any questions. We're